Israel is in Egypt. This week's Parsha Shemot starts off with Yaakov and his sons and their entire generation having passed away. Without their influence, a new king arose who did not know, whether knowingly or unknowingly, of Yosef's contributions to Egypt's survival and success. After taking power, this new Paro looked around to see what could threaten his kingdom's stability. Due to their number, he singled out the children of Israel as a threat and decided that they needed to be dealt with accordingly. His rationale, though, seemed to be quite absurd. Perhaps a war will break out and Israel will join the enemy and leave the land. The possibility that a portion of the population might join forces with an invading army is a threat indeed. But while it might be a blow to national pride, why would leaving the land be considered to be a terrifying threat? To whom would it harm? Shadal, explaining Rashbam, says that the issue at hand was actually economic. Israel had filled many of the important yet unwanted jobs of the land, such as shepherding. As such, if Israel was to suddenly leave, there would be no one to fill these jobs. The overall idea that the issue was economic sounds very compelling, as we saw that Yosef's interpretation of Paro's dreams was based upon the economy being one of Paro's major concerns. Yet, there will always be ways to fill menial and unwanted jobs, especially in an advanced society such as Egypt. As such, it must be that Paro saw a different and greater economic threat to his country than just needing to find people for these types of unwanted jobs. So, what threat did Paro see that terrified him, that Israel could pick up and leave Egypt? An economy is based upon the total input and output of all the people in the land. Imagine what would happen if approximately half or a very large part of the country would suddenly pick up and leave, disappearing from the economy. The economy could and probably would drastically shrink overnight and collapse. Chaos would ensue. The Torah told us that a new Paro had just come to power and did a risk assessment. He looked around and saw this foreign, non-Egyptian nation, Israel, that was quite numerous. In truth, Israel probably was not a threat, nor would they have joined a fight against them in case of war either. Israel was grateful that Egypt had sheltered them from the famine and welcomed them with open arms. War, however, devastates the area of fighting, with many non-combatants fleeing for their lives. As such, in case of war, there would be a great risk that all of Israel would flee from Egypt for greener pastures. This sudden, huge loss of economic input and output would cause a tremendous shock to the economy and could be the downfall of his regime. This grave threat gave the new Paro nightmares, and as a result, he acted accordingly. You might ask, what's the big deal? While people might and can act against their best interests, a new Paro establishing and solidifying his kingdom would not. He might make mistakes, but he would be trying to act in the interest of his nation and or his rule. Paro was a rational actor. His diagnosis and solution to his perceived problem at face value seemed to be quite irrational. But as we saw, there was logic to his thoughts and response. It was this perception in Paro's mind and his reaction to it that laid the groundwork that led to Egypt fulfilling God's promise to Abraham and to the transformation of Israel into God's people. An example of Mishle's remark, a king's heart is in God's hands. Shabbat Shalom.